Welcome to part two of Choosing Courage Over Comfort. It's a series that we're going through in the Learning Academy, and I'm your host today, Brene Brown, the Director of Employee Development. So we're looking at Brene Brown's research and her findings on values and providing feedback to others. During part one, I took you through an exercise where you reflected on what defines you as a person and who you are at your best, and then also what kind of a filter do you use when you make hard decisions. Then I took you through a list of about 100 values, and you narrowed down your list from probably 10, 20, 30 values down to your top 3 personal values. So in the spirit of living into mine, I'm going to be vulnerable and share my top 3 with you. They are authenticity, humility, and vulnerability. I struggled a little bit to narrow it down because I hold a few others very high on my list, like integrity. And for me, I have kind of bundled authenticity and integrity together because I feel that I can't be my authentic self if I do not have integrity. So that's kind of how I whittled it down to my top 3. So I bet if you're listening to this right now, you would probably agree with me that we don't always live into our values like we should. And that's okay. We're all human. We just have to take some steps to be able to get just a little bit better every day. Something that I would encourage you to do is find someone that you can share your values with and ask them to hold you accountable when you start to live outside of those values. So by this time, you've identified your values, you've written down behaviors that align with your values, and also acknowledged behaviors that you can fall into that don't align. And then you've even reflected on a time when you were at your best living into your values. So let's get specific now. How do we live into our values when we're providing feedback to others? Specifically, when we have to have tough conversations. In her book, Daring Greatly, Brene gave us a 10-point checklist that you can use to determine if you are in the right headspace to give someone feedback. Today, I want to focus on 2 of the ones that I feel are the most important, but in the learning log, you'll be able to see all 10 checkpoints if you'd like. The first one that I'd like to talk about is listening, asking, and accepting. So the first thing you need to do is consider when you're preparing to give feedback and living into your values, whether or not you are ready to listen to the other person, ask them questions, and then accept that you may not fully understand the issue or challenge at hand. When we're giving feedback, Brene encourages us to think of it as a time that you are facilitating a conversation, you're fact-finding, you're not lecturing. And that's something that I go into feedback sessions, or when I think of feedback sessions, I often think of them as a lecture. And I'm encouraging myself and you as well, think of them differently. Think of them as something that we can build on. Typically, we think of them as one and done conversations, not something that can go on through the course of a relationship that we have with someone. If you aren't ready to listen and ask questions and accept that you may not fully understand the issue, you are probably picking someone else's mistakes apart, which leads us into the second point that I'd like us to discuss today, and that's strengths-based feedback. What we are encouraged to do here is reflect on someone's strengths when you are preparing to give them feedback. If you're not able to think of their strengths, you're not ready to provide feedback. But what she tells us to do is think of someone's strengths and then help them to see how they can use those strengths to address the current challenge or issue that you're addressing. So those are the 2 things that I want you to remember when you're giving feedback, but also remember to infuse your values within those times when you're giving feedback or having tough conversations. Remember that feedback can come in 2 different ways. It can be formal, it can also be informal. Formal could be when we do the staff and academic administrator feedback surveys on the annual basis. But you could also give feedback informally when you're working on a project with a colleague. It's something that we can infuse into our culture. if each one of us starts to do it and incorporating that into who we are. I hope this has been helpful, and I'll see you next time.